Hey, I'm James, and this video will be about how the Conservative Party is English, and how by extension Conservative governments are English. They're English governments. They're not British governments or governments of the entirety of the UK. They are just English governments, and the Conservative Party is just singularly an English party. And I do later on in the video go on about how talk more into how devolution works in the UK as well. So, instruction, part 1. This sort of continues off my last video. If you didn't see it, basically one of the takeaways is that first past the post voting system in the UK is lame. I hate it, and it causes far too many people to feel disenfranchised. It's big thumbs down, mega lame, hate it. And for example, people who are in like safe seat constituencies, who are not in the majority of that constituency. Like, for example, I have Birmingham Hall Green 2019 general election constituency shown. The 17,022 people that didn't vote for Labour are not going to have their views brought forward in Parliament. And just like in 2017, and probably will be in the next general election, their views won't be represented in Parliament. And their ideas aren't being fought for. They're just going to be ignored. They're going to think that there's no point in them voting because they're say, for example, conservative views aren't going to get put forward by the Labour member of Parliament that'll be representing the constituency. It's just a crappy system. I hate it. And another thing that I've just got to set, we also have to discuss the United Kingdom in this video to discuss the Conservative Party, British governments, UK governments, and devolution. So I don't know if you're American, but this is the United Kingdom, made up of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the UK is made up of 3 countries and 1 province. Northern Ireland being the province. Scotland, Wales, and England are defined as countries by the International Organization of Standardization, whereas Northern Ireland is defined as a province. But I won't be talking about Northern Ireland in this video. I'll just be focusing on the landmass that is Great Britain, because that's, not giving away my political opinions on Irish unification or anything, but Northern Ireland isn't going to be important to this discussion. They don't vote Conservative anyway, even though they have, right-wing parties. But yeah. What you should note is that if you are some American, is you obviously would know if you're, or maybe not if you're English. Some English don't know, but the English, Welsh, and Scottish all have distinct cultures, languages, and outlooks on life. If you call a Welsh person or a Scottish person English, they're gonna be mad. They're gonna be hella mad. They're not gonna like you. You're gonna be off to a rough start. So don't do that. But we should also talk about the 2 main political parties of the United Kingdom as a whole, or just Great Britain as a whole, I guess. First, the party that's currently in government, officially named the Conservative and Unionist Party, which is an ideologically centre-right winged party. And then we have the Labour Party, who is in opposition and is an ideologically centre-left political party. Now, obviously, they've not always been centre-left and centre-right. Labour used to be quite left, and Conservatives used to be quite right. But how the system is now is that they're centre-right and centre-left. And all the information and numbers that I'll be talking about in this video will be from this paper called UK Election Statistics 2018 to 2019: A Century of Elections. And originally, when I was going to talk about general elections later on in this video, I was going to start in 1918, in the 1918 general election, but it's easier to start in 1945. And not only will I be starting from 1945 whenever I talk about future, just reference political stuff. It's not only for time-saving reasons, because the last video was so damn long, but it's also because post-war UK, post-World War II UK, the political divide in the UK was most apparent after World War II, where the divide was based around the size and scope of government services and taxation, which is basically what we have today. It's, should we cut down on the size of government services and cut down on taxes, or should we increase government services like the NHS and increase taxes in order to subsidize them? That's basically what the political divide is, and it basically started after World War II. It's like, obviously that divide may have still been there before World War II, but it was just most highlighted starting in the 1945 general election with Attlee and whatnot. And you know, 75 years is a long time, and hopefully, like, going from 1945 to 2020, you'll accept that over me, going from 1920 to 45, an extra 25 years. It's whatever. It's fine. Whatever. So part 2 of the video will be more about like numbers. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you now, so please be okay with this. Just get over it. I swear there's a point. So as of right now in 2020, unless Bojo jumps in by the end of the year, there have been 21 general elections up to and including the 1945 general election. These have resulted in 11 conservative governments, 9 Labour governments, and 1 coalition government. The conservative government was in 1951, 55, 59, 70, 79, 83, 87, 92, 15, 17, and 19. Labour governments, well, the Labour wins 45, 50, 64, 66, 74, 74, 97, 1, and 5. The coalition government was in 2010, but it was a conservative-left coalition government, so it's going on the conservative side, okay? So that's basically 22 conservative victories and 9 Labour victories, but we'll keep it to 11-9-1, okay? We'll keep it to 11-9-1. And of these 21 general elections, only 2 of these elections resulted in a government forming without winning the popular vote. This being in 1951 with a conservative victory, but Labour having 0.8% majority. Was it 0.8? Yeah, it was 0.8% majority of the vote. And in the 1974 February election, bear in mind another one was called in October because I think they formed a minority government, with a Labour victory, but the Conservatives having 0.7% more of the vote. So I think I can confidently say that whoever the people's vote is, like whichever the people, quote unquote, people of the United Kingdom vote for, will win in the Commons. They'll be the one who gets to form a government. Whoever the people vote for, are the people that deserve to be running the country. But I think we should really look at which. Let's look at who these people are. Which people of the United Kingdom get to choose which governments are theirs and which government gets to be in charge. Let's look at the English people. Now, of the 23 general elections, 3 of them, 1964, 1974 February, and 2005, had a different victory than the English popular vote. Noticeably, 1951 also had a weird thing going on. It had like a 48.8 to 48.8 split between Conservative and Labour, but so we're not including that. But I just thought that was something that was pretty cool to pin on. Now, considering that the overwhelming majority of constituencies in the UK are English, those 2 general elections differing to the English popular vote, it's rather surprising. But what you could say is that 3 out of the 21 general elections differed to how the English people wanted it to go. And the thing is that all of these general elections that the English people were different to had Labour victories. So the only time that the English popular vote went against the United Kingdom was for conservatism. Like, for the Conservative Party. It's just something to keep in mind. So let's look at Scotland next. In Scotland, of the 21 general elections, 9 of them, I'm just going to list them, 70, 79, 83, 87, 92, 10, 15, 17, and 19, had different outcomes to the general election results. And you'll notice that these are all very recent and that all of them were Conservative victories. So what this means is that the Scottish people have not had a majority of vote for a Conservative government since 1951, which was 61 years ago. 61 years ago. 9 out of 21 of all post-war governments of the UK have not been a reflection of what the Scottish people have wanted. Like, not at all. And then let's look at Wales. 12 of the general election results, 51, 55, 59, 70, 79, 83, 87, 92, 10, 15, 17, 19, which have not been what the Welsh people voted for. And you'll notice that every single time, they were all Conservative victories. The Welsh people have also never post-war majority voted for Conservatives. Hell, even if we go back to 1918, they have not had a majority vote for Conservatives for over 100 years. The Welsh people have never voted for austerity and for any type of conservative policy in the 20th or 21st century. It just hasn't happened. But looking at this, all I can say is that the Conservative Party is in fact an English party. Like, obviously there are people in Wales and Scotland who vote Conservative, but Conservative ideology is not as ingrained in the Welsh and Scottish as it appears to be in the English. And even though I hate first past the post, I'm just going to have a quick look at the 2019 general election constituency results, which formed, the government we have now and whatnot. So of the 365 seats that gave them a very large majority, 345 of them were already English. They were already English. That's already a majority. 345 is already a majority. You need 326 plus one, I guess, for a majority. But they had 345 from England alone. So England alone already decided the next UK government. But 6 of them came from Scotland and 14 came from Wales. But again, these seats aren't representative of the vote. So that means 20 out of 99 seats, 20 out of 99 of the Scottish and Wales combined seats were for Conservatives. So, like, it just doesn't reflect. The Scottish and Welsh just don't want Conservative governments. They don't want austerity. They don't want Conservative policy. It's just not what they want. And I can only come to the conclusion that the Conservative Party and English people need to reflect on why these policies aren't popular among Wales and Scotland. And whilst English, Scots, and Welsh people live on Great Britain together, we're not all the same. And it's a pretty good thing, Diversity is pretty wizard. We get some cool stuff out of it. It's quite good. And all I can say is that Westminster is an English parliament. Like, Westminster being overwhelmingly majority English seats means that whenever England dictates when Conservatives are in charge of the UK, so these Conservatives get to impose their policies on the Scottish and Welsh people who don't agree with them. Part 3. Devolution. In the 1997 general election, Tony Blair and the Labour Party were elected in an absolute landslide victory under first past the post. And one of their election campaigns promises were for creating devolved powers in Scotland and Wales, almost so putting like a referendum to it. And so in 1997, there were referendums in both countries with yes winning. Hey, we would like devolved powers. And so in 1998, the Scotland Act, 1998, was passed, and the Scottish Parliament was born. And there have been many new acts and updates to devolution in Scotland since then. But as of now, in 2020, if you're above the age of 16, you can vote in the Scottish Parliament, and it has certain powers. These powers can include, but are not limited to, powers over health, education, local government, law and home affairs, and the environment, sports and the arts, social security, taxation, agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, housing, tourism, and many aspects of transport. For example, with the education, they have powers over like their own nurseries, schools, colleges, and universities. Or as with local government, they have responsibility for the local councils. Their law, Scottish law is different to English and Welsh law, so they have a lot more control over what they can do with, like, say, prison sentences or the fire service, stuff like that. But there are also powers that are like specifically deemed to be just for Westminster. These are Westminster powers. You cannot change these in Scotland, and these are like broadcasting policy, civil service, blah, 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 blah. These are things that Scotland cannot mess with. They cannot change, but they can change other things. These are basically things that general election governments, like Westminster governments, can control and can still impose over Scotland. And there are 129 members of the Scottish Parliament, or MSPs, who vote on these issues. The voting system in Parliament, in the Scottish Parliament, is the additional member system, which is like way better to represent the people than the first past the post system, and is pretty sick, I add, in my political terms. And again, you can vote at 16. It's like 2 years earlier than in the UK general election. I think that's pretty good. I don't know if I like people voting at 16, but I like people voting at 16 and using the additional member system. So I guess it's pretty cool. And in Wales, with the Government of Wales Act 1988, the National Assembly for Wales was born. Just like Scotland, Wales has had more acts passed and further changes to increase its devolution. And now in November 2020, it is called Senedd Coimri, which is Welsh Parliament, or just people just call it the Senedd, And just like Scotland's, 16-year-olds can vote in these elections, and it also uses the additional member system, just like Scotland's, which is pretty sick. And the Senedd has powers over all these things you can see on the screen. They're very boring, but don't let it fool you into thinking that it has more powers over than Scotland, because it absolutely does not. Mostly because English and Welsh law are like intertwined from when the English just conquered the Welsh and then was like, you're ours now. And then so Wales doesn't have its own legal system. Its judicial system is tied with the English. So they don't have the same control over laws that the Scottish have, the same freedom in that regard. And they're also just restricted in lots of other regards. Like they have a lot more restrictions on taxes than the Scottish do, which is kind of lame, but whatever. Now, as us mighty English people have bestowed powers upon the minorities of Great Britain, a question was being asked. Commonly known as the West Lothian question, or the English question. And this question has been asked since the late 70s. It questions whether or not MPs from Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales in the House of Commons should be allowed to vote on matters that affect England only, like just England. Because MPs from England cannot vote on matters that have been devolved to the Senedd or the Scottish Parliament. So of course, the English people must make it about themselves. We've only just given these people rights over their own autonomy and stuff, and we're like, what? This isn't benefiting us. Whatever. It's still a good issue to be raised. And in the early 2000s, this issue was raised many times, and most notably, also during a time when a bill was trying to pass called the Higher Education Bill. This bill, now an act, was about changes to funding or just financial arrangements of higher education students in England and Wales, and was voted for and passed 316 for and 311 against. Now, Scotland, as previously mentioned, had devolved autonomy over higher education. So this bill didn't affect them. It only affected Wales and England. But however, 46 Scottish Labour MPs voted with the government for this bill, even though these plans wouldn't have affected them. If you only look at the English votes for this bill, just how English MPs would have voted for this bill, then the bill would have failed. It wouldn't have passed through the Commons at all, which is quite hilarious. And the Tories, the Conservatives' sole Scottish MP, who abstained on the this is an English vote for English education. He said, "This is a dark day for British democracy, and the actions of Scottish MPs are reprehensible." Obviously, he probably said this with a Scottish accent, but I hope that I can still get his point across. Now, it's obviously quite hilarious because English MPs have been doing this for all of time, so that when rights and powers have been devolved to the Scottish and Welsh people, that they do something back to us. They vote on policy that affects us, but doesn't affect them. For once, it's reprehensible. It's quite funny, and he claims it's largely for British democracy, not English democracy. It's just something to think about, So with devolution, getting larger and larger in the UK, the issue became a larger and larger talking point. Should these people have rights to vote on things that only affect English people, blah, blah, blah. And so, when it came to the 2015 general election, the manifesto of Conservative, Labour, and Lib Dems all talked of how England should be governed and what should be done and whatever. But obviously, the Conservatives won. And in the Conservative manifesto, it stated that the Conservatives supported evil. English votes for English laws. What this means is that legislation that would affect only England would be verified that it does in fact affect only England, and then it can only be voted on by English MPs. Or say if it was because lots of English and Welsh legislation tied, in English and Wales are quite tied. It also stated that if it was English-Welsh legislation that only affected the English and the Welsh, then it could only be voted for by the English and Welsh MPs, which is pretty cool. This is a cool thing. If this happened with all laws, I'd find it pretty cool. Very cool. And it passed, so it does now, and that's pretty sick. Evil, conservative evil strikes again. But anyway, the English question was still quite an issue, and the English question is a representation to me of English narcissism. Only when it started to affect us did we question how voting on matters that affect others could affect them, which is kind of lame. But I'm going to talk about now some solutions to the English question. Now, this is kind of as of it now in 2020, quite a far gone issue. The UK voted to leave the European Union, and 2 snap general elections has confirmed that it's doing so. And the Scottish public are really, really, really against it. And I just kind of feel that the Union of Great Britain, of us 3 nations, we're on a tight thread. It's not going to go so well. So how can we fix the Union, keep it together, and keep it strong, as well as oh God, how can we English get what we want, And there are 2 ways that I can see this going. The first way is if we're having 3 devolved parliaments. So an English parliament with legislative powers like the Scottish one, but obviously far greater. And England can be federated as well. It could be West Midlands area, and it can be the North area. There can be Cornwall as an area. Quite federated England. All of our own areas of government. The Senate would also have a lot more powers, brought in line with both the English and the Scottish government, where we can decide on what policies we want for our countries, as a whole, how it should be. The country should choose what it wants to do in terms of policy. And then there should be a strong national Westminster government, like a federal government of Great Britain, for all us Brits, to represent all us Brits for foreign policy and other federal shenanigans like I don't know, they could declare, we could the federal government could be like, hey, you can decide whether or not weed should be legal or not, and then England could be like, oh, we don't want weed to be legal, and then Scotland could be like, they could be blazing it up, and that's okay. Just to have a federal government to represent the Great Britain on a global stage, pretty good stuff. Imagine like how America does it, but hopefully a bit more competent than how they do it. And the second solution to the English question is that the union just dissolves. It goes bye-bye, which is sad. I don't like this idea, but a lot of Scottish and increasingly now a number of Welsh people support the idea of England, Scotland, and Wales just becoming sovereign states. There's no English question. If only English people can vote on English laws, and Scottish people can vote on Scottish laws, because there's only one Scottish government, and only Welsh people can vote on Welsh laws because there's only one Welsh government. Sounds pretty good, right? But I don't like this idea. I think we'd be better together. But I don't know. Whilst the dissolving of the union does sound like a bad thing, perhaps being independent, each nation being independent with their own sovereignty, they could have their own we could all have maybe freedom of movement between each other, and the rights to work between nations, and maybe we could set up laws based around what can be traded freely between our nations, which could help promote peace. We could share technologies between ourselves for the well-being of the citizens, and maybe we could even share a common currency. We could share a common currency. Oh, yeah. Finally, this brings me on to the conclusion. It took forever, actually forever, for the Welsh and Scottish to get decent devolution, or what it has now. But less than 20 years of establishing the first stages of devolution, did English MPs throw their toys out of the plan and say, I want what they have, and start pushing for more English-centric powers, even though Westminster is a purely English parliament. The English people get what they get in parliament. It just is what it is. And with the Bojo man coming out and saying that the devolution in Scotland has been a disaster, whilst at the same time the Remains supporting party of the SNP getting 45% of the Scottish popular vote, it just seems to me like the Conservative government and the Conservative Party is just going against what the Scottish people want. It's just not cool. It's just it's not how this nation should be. We should be obviously we shouldn't Scottish people don't have to like what the Conservatives do, but eventually the Scottish people will get their they should decide their own policy for their country. But for example, he also pushed the Internal Markets Bill through the House of Commons, which not only breaks international law, which is not to be talked about now, but it literally strips powers from these devolved governments of Wales and Scotland and funnels them to Westminster. And here's what politicians have had to say. So if we look at Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford on the left, who said the Internal Markets Bill provides ammunition to those people who would favour the breakup of the United Kingdom. Plaid Cymru's Westminster leader, Liv Sabel-Roberts, said that this bill is the single biggest assault on devolution since its creation. Chatham Price, at the bottom there, leader of Plaid Cymru, said that the bill signified the destruction of 2 decades of devolution. So obviously, the Welsh hate what the Conservatives are doing right now. What about the Scottish First Minister and SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon? Well, she said that the bill is an abomination which would cripple devolution, and she'll fight tooth and claw against it. Come on. It's just, the Scottish don't like it. The Welsh don't like it. What have the English said? Well, if we look at what Theresa May, and some of you may know very fondly, what has she said? Well, she describes the plan for the Internal Market Bill as reckless and irresponsible, and said that they risked the integrity of the United Kingdom, and as they would not only tarnish Britain's reputation globally as a upholder of the law, in reference to it breaking international law, but could contribute to a reunited Ireland. Which I haven't even been talking about Ireland, but she's like, yo, this is gonna reunite Ireland, yo. Sounds pretty bad. If you think that's bad, I'm not gonna tell you what I think, but I definitely think it's good. Smile. And that lovely ballsack man on the left is Michael Gove, and he's a government minister right now. And he said, and I quote, "These new spending powers will mean, in the Internal Markets Bill, will mean that these decisions will now be made in the UK, focus on UK priorities, and be accountable to the UK Parliament and people of the UK." Well, basically what he just said was these powers will now be made in England, focus on conservative priorities, be accountable to Westminster and the Conservatives in Westminster. That's all the Internal Market Bill does. It just gives powers to Westminster and to Tories that are in Westminster. It's just not cool. So when the Tories in Westminster, like Bojo and anyone else, and just maybe even an everyday English conservative, they hear independence speak, or even further devolution talk between the Scottish and Welsh people as being like anti-English, but it's not anti-English, it's anti-Westminster. And the thing is that Westminster is most often than not Tory. Westminster is Tory. And it just so happens that if people that vote for Tories, Conservatives, are English. So I would even go as far to say, and I definitely will regret saying this, is that to be open-hearted and open-minded is to be British. To be apathetic and close-minded is to be a conservative. And most conservatives are English. Yeah, that's all. That's the entire video. And basically, that's it. Yeah. Have fun. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Thanks for watching.